One of the people who have lived a very funny life, a unique funny life, is Emperor Bokasa. His full names were Bedel Bokasa. Bedel Bokasa joined the colonial military of Central Africa Republic, what was later to be called the Central Africa Republic, and he rose to the rank of regimental sergeant major. He rose to the rank of regimental sergeant major. And then the country attained independence, and he was among those NCOs who were quickly commissioned so as to take over from the departing colonialism. In Kenya, we had Mulinge and Ndolo. In Uganda, we had Idi Amin Dada, and so on and so forth. The French government, while departing from their colonies, made a different suggestion. For example, when they were leaving, Bedel Bokasa moved from the colonial army and started the Central African Republic Army or military. And that is when he was commissioned. But the arrangements then was funny that all military people who were transitioning, like in Kenya and Uganda, when Amin transitioned into Uganda Army, the time of those who went and retired, their retirement benefits were calculated as though the number of years that they had served the colonial army was added to the ones that they had worked for independent army. So, but in Central African Republic, I do not know about other French-speaking countries. He joined the military as a commissioned officer, but for his lifetime, he continued getting pension of a French army regimental sergeant major. My Necktop computer has not recovered the name of the first president of Central African Republic, but he was a cousin to the second president, and both of them were cousins to Bedel Bokasa. So, when the second president, whom I know the name, was called David Dacko. David Dacko became the president, and when the first president and the second president were there, the French government told them to be careful with Bokasa. But just like in Uganda, independent African presidents used to think that any person whom a colonialism had indicated that he was not good, then that would have been a very good soldier. Because African presidents used to think that if you remove those NCOs who are, the second lot that will go up will delay the departure of the colonialist military officers. So that is how they used to read it. But just like in Uganda, when Obote was told to be careful with Amin, the same thing happened in Central Africa Republic. Bedel Bokasa had drawn the attention of the colonialists, but the two presidents, who the first and second were cousins, and they were cousins to him, they wanted the military to be headed by a relative. But again, David Dacko, who was the second president, he had those telltale signs that Bokasa is not a good person, but he continued ignoring it. Then on New Year's Day, 1966, before that time, around 1965, a minister had noticed that and called David Dacko and told him that I can notice this military man is very ambitious. Why don't you make him a minister? You know, making him a minister, maybe minister for foreign affairs or anything, would sever links between Jean Bedel Bokasa. By then he was a colonel. It was to sever him from the military. But David Dako ignored. Then on New Year's Day 1966, Jean Bedel Bokasa overthrew David Dako, who was his cousin, and he continued being the president from January 1966 to December 1976. That is 10 years. And those 10 years, hey, there's no rank he didn't. He gave himself from colonel, the following year brigadier, the following year major general, the following year lieutenant general, the following year full general, then the following year field marshal. And you see, when you reach field marshal, there's no other rank. And then in December 1976, he saw that since he had acquired all the ranks, he was now a field marshal. He was the president. He asked himself, which other rank is remaining? Then he came and discovered that the rank that was bigger than the president was emperor. So he declared that Central African Republic would no longer be a republic. It would be an empire. So he called himself Emperor Bokasa the First. That was in 1976 December. In 1976 December, he made himself the emperor. So from December 1976 to September 1979, he was an emperor, and the country was called Central African Empire. The throne that he sat on, the throne that he sat on was purchased by France, and it was so expensive. He stayed there, and you see, when he became the emperor, when he had overthrown his cousin, David Dako, David Dako continued staying in the capital, Bangui, as a citizen, a normal citizen. Then in September 1979, when he made himself an emperor, he appointed David Dako as the head of the civil service. Head of the civil service. So this one was a civil servant number one, permanent secretary in the office. In Kenya we call it a permanent secretary in the office of the president, but nowadays I think it is Koskei who is the head of the civil service. That is the position he gave a former president. And you see, the head of the civil service is very powerful compared, I think is the next person after the vice president. But in this case, this one had declared the country to be, he had declared the country to be a monarch, an empire. He declared the country to be an empire between December 1976 and September 1979. And during those 3 years, he made the former president be the chief of staff and head of the public service. Big mistake. This is a fellow who organizes everything, and he told the president that you go to, there was a meeting abroad, you go there, stay a bit longer and so on. And then David Dako overthrew him in September 1979 and made Central Africa Empire revert back to Central Africa Republic. Bokasa stayed in exile a bit, but came back Between 79 and 86, he stayed in exile and came back. And 1986, first of all, before he came back in 1986, he had been tried in absentia and sentenced to death. But when he came back in 1986, he had a new trial where he was charged with so many offenses, including cannibalism, but it was not proven. But he was convicted of children murder. He had ordered some children to be murdered, and that is what he was convicted for and sentenced to death. But before he was killed, the sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. And then later he was released in 1993, and 3 years later, 1996, he died. That is the history. So unique, eh? Imagine you overthrow the president and make him the head of the civil service, and then he overthrows you again. Never heard of that. Okay, I've heard of cases like Obote. Obote was overthrown by Amin, but then other people came from Tanzania and overthrew Amin and brought them. But this one is a person who kept him in the state house. Imagine you being the president of your country, the state house, you are the overall, and then later you are employed as the chief of staff of the same state house that you used to own. Can I use the word own? Yeah. JI-TENGE is going regional. Soon, we are going to cover other neighboring countries to Kenya, because I have fans all over and people would want to know that. Thank you.